the network right now. That means there's no new tweets from any of the 584 people I follow. So until one of them posts a tweet and it comes to our network, oh look, we just got a notification and a new timeline element, and it came. So here we have some JSON. JSON is very similar to like HTML in a sense that it's just a bunch of nested data. So if we look at our HTML that we created in tutorial 1, 2, and 3, we can see that we have neck, div, and inside of the neck div we have other divs. Like for example, I created message, you didn't see me do that, and then we have this font div which we create together, etc. We have up here HTML div or HTML element, and inside of that we have a head element, and inside of that, etc., etc. So that's the same way Twitter does it with JSON, except it's just a different format. So their base or their HTML tag, the one that encompasses everything, is called inner. Instead of a head tag inside of the HTML tag, they have a element called sense ID, and they also has more items instead of, like for example, a script element. And instead of, let's say, a style element, they have items HTML. And then in there they have data, for example, when the tweet was posted, and then all the information about the tweet. So like for example, this tweet here, we'll be able to find it basically somewhere in here, tweetbot for OS, blah blah blah, all the information that goes into this. And this is all these like special codes are part of their view convention. So it tells basically what it should look like, what it should style like, and how it should render, kind of like this. So long story short, it's getting information from Twitter server and it's putting it on my page without me having to refresh. And that's really great. And let's talk about how we can do that. So what I've crafted here is I've created a cloud folder, a new cloud folder, and I have get message and make message. So basically one would allow me to send a message to a server and one will allow me to get a message back from the server. Well, let me just focus and let us focus right now on getMessage.php. So a PHP file, we'll talk about what PHP files are, how they sit on the server, all that in the next tutorial. But for now, let's just kind of use our imaginations. Long story short, our PHP file gets some information. For example, it gets a user ID, gets a message, and that's part of an array. An array is just a collection of information. And so we have arrays in JavaScript, we have arrays in PHP, and any programming language will always have arrays. It's a data type. It's just a collection of information. And we'll go more into that later. But we have a response. What we want to do with our response is JSON encode it. And JSON encode it basically turns this into a format that looks like this. And asynchronous JSON and XML, which is what Ajax stands for, asynchronous JSON and XML, basically means that it will accept a format of JSON or XML. And here we're going to use JSON. JSON is the most used right now on the web. It used to be XML, but JSON is so much smaller. XML basically looks like HTML, except for there's just a few minor differences. But you can imagine that it just has a bunch of open and closed tags, which it does, and then it just has a lot of data inside of those tags. Now, and you can have tags inside of tags, you can have data inside of tags. For example, this would be an example of data inside of a tag, and this would be an example of a tag inside of a tag. Now, we use JSON, like I said, just like it, except it just takes up less space. As you can see, as opposed to tags with JSON, we just have these little curly braces. And you see how I can just kind of pull down, I can see all the little elements in it. JSON is awesome. So, let's look at some JSON. I just basically connected to a server where I have example 50 folder, just like I have my example 50 folder on my client. Now this is my client, this is my computer, and this is another computer based out in Chicago over here. So in Chicago, there are some files and they're over here. And now what I want to do is I want to go inside of my cloud and I want to upload getMessage.php. So I uploaded it, it got sent over, I'm going to overwrite the old file that I have, and it's there now. This file is now in Chicago. Now, what I want to do, and I'm just going to go over here to my example server, and I'm just going to go to example 50. And when I go to example 50, I'll see our little click me button that floats up and down like that, right? So that's on our server, but the information is now saved as HTML on my client. So my client made a request to the server, it got all this HTML, and now this HTML is on my page. Now what if I want to update it dynamically based on information that might change on the server without having the user actually refresh, get the new HTML, and reinitialize it like that? Well, if I want to do that, all I have to do is go over here and I'm going to upload a cloud folder, right? So I'm going to go to my cloud folder. I'm going to put some PHP files up there. Now, PHP is just like PHP file is just like an HTML file, except a PHP file can communicate with the server directly to the database and the Facebook. We'll talk more about what PHP files do and how they work a little bit later. But now, let me just go over here to cloud folder in my browser, and I'll see the two files, get message and make message. Well, we got get message, so I'm going to click on get message, and I'm going to see my JSON there. So this is the data that I want. I have a user ID and I have a message. Now, if I want to get that data over here, what I can do is create a div in my HTML, for example, called message. I have a message div. And this is where I'm going to put the information, for example, the message that's brought back from the server. Now, I created a function up here called getMessage. We'll talk about what functions are, how to create them, how to use JavaScript, etc. more in depth. We covered that a little bit in the third tutorial, but we're going to go more in depth to it. But basically what I've done here is just create a function called getMessage, which has a jQuery call. So whenever you see a $sign and you've imported jQuery as we have done, the $sign represents jQuery. And I say jQuery, hey, dot, call a method, your Ajax method, which is what we're talking about, asynchronous JSON and XML. And I say, I'm going to specify a few parameters. So in here, I actually have something that looks like JSON. This practically is JSON, but I'm sending this data to my server, and I'm saying, hey, to this URL, cloud/getMessage.php. Just like over here, we have cloud/getMessage.php. That's where I'm sending it to. In fact, to really emphasize this, I'll put the whole URL. So it's mk.com/example50/cloud/getMessage.php. So that's where we're going. And then what I want to say is data. So for example, do I have any data to send it? Right now we don't have any data, so we're not going to worry about that parameter. But I want to do is I want to say complete. Hey, when you're complete, when this actually comes back, and that's why it's called asynchronous, because based on my internet connection, it could take 1 second for the data to go all the way to Chicago and come back, or it could take 3 seconds, maybe if I'm on a really slow network or something like that. There are a lot of people on my network. But what I'm going to say is when it completes, asynchronous means that it's not like this, then that, then this. Asynchronous means it can kind of happen whenever, and my code has to kind of accommodate that. So I have this callback function that says whenever it does complete, I want you to do this. So I have this function, and this is what we call an anonymous function. It doesn't have a name. So complete, have this function, and then I want to take the transport and return that JSON into something I can use. So what I'll say is the response is equal to, and then I'll use a jQuery method called parse JSON, and I'll parse the response, and there's a certain part of the response called response text, and it's actually everything that I send back from the server. There's a lot of other things, like a lot of other information that's in there, and we'll talk about that later. But basically I say, hey, jQuery, call your Ajax method, this is the URL I want to query, and then in query just means I want to get access to, I want to make a call to, and that's what a call is, in case you were wondering. That's what calls are all about. I want to get information back. When I call a person, I want to get information back. I call this person or this file, and when they respond, I listen for their response, and now I'm going to take that and turn that into my response over here. And then I'm going to alert, and this is just going to have a pop-up of the message. So I want response. I don't want the user ID, for example. For this example, I just want the message. And I put that, and then I upload this to the server. But first I have to call it. So when the document's ready, I'm going to say get message. So document ready, get message. And now I upload that to the server. And then I refresh over here. And then boom, hello, message.